Hello and welcome to today's virtual lesson, which is all about inverted commas. Can you remember what inverted commas are? Well done if you remembered that that's just another name for a speech mark. It's a type of punctuation, just like a full stop, an exclamation mark or a question mark. It helps the writer to show the reader what's happening in the text. It's a good clue for us to look for that tells us somebody was speaking. This is known as direct speech. When a character is saying something in a story, that is their direct speech. It would be out loud if it was in real life. If you're reading a graphic novel or a comic book like this, you tend not to see inverted commas because the speech is shown in speech bubbles. However, if you're reading a storybook or a novel, just like Brightstorm, the one we're sharing at the moment, you'll notice that there aren't any speech bubbles. In fact, there aren't really any pictures. So the writer has to use other ways to show us that a person is speaking. They have to use punctuation. They will use inverted commas at the beginning and at the end of a sentence or a piece of direct speech to show us that somebody said that out loud. Here we've got a part of a Simpsons comic, and this writer has used both things. You can see that Milhouse and Ralph are speaking. So they've got a speech bubble for their direct speech. But in the yellow boxes, you can see the narrator's voice, and the writer has used inverted commas to show us that Bart would be narrating this scene. They're showing us that Bart is speaking. You have to make sure that you have your inverted commas at the beginning of when someone is speaking and at the end, and the speech sits inside. But also there has to be some punctuation inside them. Here we've got two examples. The first says, "What's for tea?" That's a question, so we know inside our inverted commas we have to have a question mark. And the next sentence says, "I'm hungry." That's a statement, so we know there should be a full stop inside the inverted commas. Going to have a look at a clip from one of my favourite television shows, and I think you'll know it too.
Don't worry, Mabel! I'll save you from that zombie! Hold on!
The character shouted, "Help!" So we had, "Help!" yelled Mabel. Can you help me by putting the punctuation in the right place? You might want to pause the video so that you can write it down and practice your handwriting at the same time. Don't forget that Mabel is the character's name, so it needs a capital letter. Let's have a look at the answer. Well done if you remembered to put the inverted commas around the direct speech and include some punctuation inside too. "Help!" yelled Mabel. That will need an exclamation mark because it's an exclamation. Let's try another one.
Is she awake?
Why are you talking?
I'm wondering if she's awake.
Well, if she's awake, she can definitely hear you talking.
I'm whispering.
Well, now we're both quietly screaming.
I can hear both of you.
Disguise yourself, fool!
Okay, I'm going to take a bit of direct speech from that video and we're going to turn it into a sentence again. Perhaps you can choose a quote that you enjoyed that you would like to give it a go, or you can do the same one as me. So I'm going to use the first thing that Finn says to Jake the dog. He said, "Is she awake?" And he kind of whispers it. So, "Is she awake?" whispered Finn. Can you spot where the punctuation needs to go? Maybe you can pause the video, have a go at writing it down. And let's have a look now. Okay, first thing we need to check for is there any direct speech? Well, yes, definitely. We know there's a bit that Finn says there. He says, "Is she awake?" So we need to have the inverted commas either side of that. And then we need some punctuation in the middle. So what type of sentence is she awake? Well done if you know that's a question. So of course we're going to need a, I'm hoping you've said question mark. Also, what goes at the very end of a sentence? I'm hoping again that you've said full stop. "Is she awake?" whispered Finn. Well done. Let's have a go at turning some graphic novels into Novels with the use of inverted commas.
When we read a comic book or a graphic novel, we know what the characters are saying because their speech is in speech bubbles. Here we have a page from the comic Gravity Falls, which is also a programme on Disney. You can tell what the characters Mabel and Dipper are saying because it's right there in the speech bubbles. But imagine I was reading a book about Gravity Falls. There wouldn't be any speech bubbles in the book, so the punctuation would have to show me when the characters are speaking. That's what inverted commas or speech marks are for. Why don't you see if you can pause the video and turn one of these speech bubbles into a sentence with speech marks? I'm going to have a go at the first one. I can see that the characters are in a new place and they're exploring the attic of the mystery shack. I can see that Mabel is surprised and she thinks that the attic is amazing. She says, "This attic is amazing." I want the readers to know that she's excited, so I'm going to use the word exclaimed. I'm remembering a capital letter for her name and a full stop at the end. Can you spot where the inverted commas or speech marks need to go? Well done if you remembered that it's around the part that the character said. I also need some punctuation inside my speech marks. Seeing as she exclaimed this, I'm going to use an exclamation mark. Next, I'm going to write about what Dipper said. There's an apostrophe in that word because it is a contraction of two words together. There and is makes theirs. Dipper's a bit confused, so I think he'd say this with a frown. I've remembered a capital letter for his name and a full stop at the end. Can you spot where the inverted commas need to go? Well done if you remembered that it's around the bit of direct speech. He says, "And there's a goat on my bed." I could use another exclamation mark here, but I think that Dipper might mumble this rather than exclaim it, so I'm going to just use a comma. This time I'm using something from the comic book Tintin. First I'm going to start by explaining what has happened. Can you think of a sentence to describe what has happened to Tintin in this comic strip? Have a go at writing your own whilst I do mine. I've noticed that he exclaims, "The first aid kit," when it hits him on the head, so I'm going to put that into a sentence. Let me read what I've got so far. Tintin's plane came crashing down and he tumbled through the canopy, landing in a pile on the ground. "The first aid kit," he yelled as it landed on his head. It doesn't quite make sense. It's missing some punctuation. Well done if you've spotted that I have forgotten to put the inverted commas in. Can you spot where they need to go? That's right. They're going to go around the part that Tintin said, his direct speech. He says, the first aid kit. So I need to put my inverted commas before and after that. I also need some punctuation inside my inverted commas. And seeing as he yelled out, I think I'm going to use an exclamation mark. Can you continue and write the next part of the comic strip, including the other direct speech that's used?
Well done for joining in today. If you've been writing down your answers, please do take a photograph and send it to your teacher via Purple Mash, or get an adult to send it by email, or you could share it on Google Classroom if you're in Year 5. Now you're going to have some exciting activities over on Purple Mash, where you're going to have to add the inverted commas in the correct place. I will see you very soon. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.